Begin this morning with the most intense escalation of violence in the Middle East since the ceasefire was declared in early April. The IDF says it launched new retaliatory strikes in Iran overnight. It followed fresh attacks from Tehran on targets in Israel. Those were carried out in response to new IDF strikes near Beirut on Monday. A few hours ago, the president issued a fresh warning to both Tehran and Tel Aviv. He wrote on Truth Social, quote, "Israel and Iran must immediately stop shooting," unquote. CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie Dagenett joins us live from Tel Aviv this morning. So, Charlie, it seems that Iran has responded to the president's demand. What are we hearing?
Yeah, so, Vlad, according to Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, they have concluded, in their words, their latest military operation, meaning the barrage of roughly 24 missiles fired toward Israel overnight. Concentration of those largely aimed at the north, but we had air raid sirens here and warnings to get into shelters this morning. That hasn't happened since April, and the schools are closed here in anticipation of Iran and ongoing attacks again. So we haven't really heard anything since. That was around like 6 a.m., and there have been maybe one or two other alarms after that. So in a statement on Iranian state TV, they said they're ceasing their attacks for now, but they warned that if Israel continues attacking, including attacking southern Lebanon, harsher attacks would follow, their words. So it's certainly a positive step forward, but once again, we are in a wait-and-see situation here.
And meanwhile, Charlie, as you know, we are in a ceasefire between Israel and Iran that was announced in April. What is this? What do these attacks mean for that ceasefire?
Well, I mean, Adriana, I took a deep breath there because we have to break that down, right? So there's a ceasefire between the United States and Iran, yet Iran has fired around 7 or 8 ballistic missiles toward U.S. bases and facilities since then. Who knows how many drones? The U.S. military has launched multiple airstrikes against targets along the Strait of Hormuz, both accusing each other of ceasefire violations while also saying we haven't broken the ceasefire. Now, as you mentioned, the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, kind of Iran adjacent to that. Both sides have been trading fire there. So we went to the border with Lebanon with Israeli forces yesterday, and residents that we spoke to say, look, we're taking fire from Hezbollah rockets and drones on the daily. And then you have Israel launching airstrikes just south of the capital, Beirut, just yesterday. So we're in a situation where all of these things are connected, and it is fragile, but holding, and there may be some positive news with the fact that Iran has said that they're not going to continue launching air strikes against Israel, and Israel, at least as we understand now, holding fire against Iran.
So, Charlie, I mean, I think it's hard for people to understand how a ceasefire can be in place when there are these escalations happening typically from day to day. It almost reminds one of the armistice that exists between North Korea and South Korea. They signed this armistice deal back in 1953, but technically they're still at war. There is no peace agreement, right? And even between those two countries, there is the amount of shooting that is happening between Iran, the United States, Israel, Lebanon. So is this the sign of a broader escalation, or are both sides going to listen to the president and cooler heads will prevail?
Yeah, it's a very good point, Vlad, and your guess is as good as mine. But where we've seen this interaction since April, there have been these sporadic escalation in fighting and attacks between the United States and Iran, Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. But again, in all of these events, these incidents, they continue to say that the ceasefire holds. And if there is a silver lining to what we've seen here, because honestly, we were in northern Israel and then we came back to Tel Aviv overnight and we got those text messages saying seek shelter, and then we got the air raid sirens, and everybody here is like, oh, are we at it again? It doesn't quite feel that way right now because there's always an opportunity to press pause. And although the Trump administration continues to say that these talks are going forward between the United States and Iran, as long as they're not firing or escalating in a significant way, and I've spoken to U.S. military officials, they said this isn't our fight. They haven't been part of any of this. They haven't even come to Israel's defense with Iranian missiles coming in here. So even though it might seem that we see these spikes going through the past couple of weeks, including the most serious one overnight, because the whole idea was that Iran would not attack Hezbollah in Beirut, or talks were off between the United States and Iran. As long as there's a sort of press pause opportunity, as you sometimes hear diplomats call an off-ramp, we're still in that off-ramp phase. So there hasn't been an all-out war, but there certainly is the threat of that if these escalations continue.
All right, Charlie Daggett reporting from Tel Aviv for us this morning. Charlie, thank you.
Let's now bring in CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi, who is in Bedminster, New Jersey. That's where the president will participate in a tele-rally later today before he heads to Manhattan for the NBA Finals tonight. Olivia, so the president told the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not to attack Iran. Israel, of course, did anyway. What does this say about the state of the president's influence over Israel?
Well, there's certainly a disconnect right now between President Trump and Bibi Netanyahu. Yesterday, President Trump not only relayed to Netanyahu that he would like Israel not to retaliate against those Iranian strikes, but he also told multiple news outlets that he relayed that to Netanyahu. So kind of giving himself a little bit of cover, especially as this was before we saw that Israeli retaliation. But there is a disconnect right now. We have seen the president several times today on Truth Social call for a stop to these strikes. He also wrote on Truth Social that both sides are looking for an immediate ceasefire. He said peace negotiations are proceeding. So he's really trying to keep this fragile ceasefire in place, make sure there's no more further strikes, while also trying to get somewhat of a deal on the table. So everything right now is very tenuous, but it certainly speaks to there being a friction between the United States and Israel when it comes to how to deal with this war. As Charlie also just laid out, part of the reason why we saw these Iranian strikes was because of the action that Israel took in Lebanon. So all of these chess pieces are very much connected. The president in the White House trying to keep everything on track as far as the negotiations, but they continue to be scuttled by what we're seeing in these regional conflicts.
Over the weekend, as you know, Olivia, the president was asked about his 2024 campaign of not starting any new wars. That was sort of a tentpole proclamation made by then candidate Trump. What did he have to say?
Well, that was a clear promise that the president made back in 2015, even in his first presidential run, something that he continued up until 2024, that there would be no new wars. And it kind of built this new coalition inside of the MAGA movement that we saw. But the president this weekend was asked if he broke that promise by starting this war. He said that no, he didn't, because this is a conflict, not a war. And he also went on to say that this isn't a forever war, an endless war, which is what he was saying he would not get the U.S. involved in. This was in an interview with Meet the Press and the moderator, Kristen Welker. Take a listen here.
First of all, I didn't guarantee no war. Why would I have built the strongest military in the world? I built our military. I inherited a terrible military. We had no equipment. We had nothing. I built a tremendous military. Biden gave a lot of it away, but it's still a relatively small portion compared to what I built.
But you said it over and over again, Mr.
Why would I
President?
build a military? Now, I didn't want to use this, but I'm doing you and everybody else a big favor.
Now, the president has consistently called this a short conflict. He has also compared it to other wars, such as Vietnam, and saying that just as far as timeline, we're nowhere near where we were on those wars, which took a long time to end. But as we're talking about this, just really in the context of what's going on in Iran, this has taken longer to get any sort of ceasefire or potential deal done there. So it's hard to say just exactly when this conflict with Iran may end.
I'm also curious, Olivia, the president just suggesting, it's hard to understand when Donald Trump speaks sometimes, but he seems to be indicating when he says, why would I have built the strongest military in the world, in a question that has to do with no new wars. In other words, seemingly to suggest I built this military up to go to war, as opposed to defending the United States or defending our strategic interests around the world.
The other way to look at it, because I was wondering about that myself, is you build the strongest military as deterrence.
That's always been the case.
Right.
Maybe that's what he meant.
But
Well,
and yet, but the idea
in
that
there as well, where he also said, Yeah, there was a part in there as well where he also said he did not guarantee that there would never be a war or no conflict. The part that was key was that he would not be the one to start it. And that is where you're seeing the disconnect between the base and part of the base who is upset about this war being started and what the president has said on the campaign trail. That seems to be where that disconnect is happening.
And the reality is we're months into this war now. And originally, he and other leaders were saying it was going to last weeks.
Right. And as Olivia points out, a war of choice.
Yeah, with no end in sight. Olivia, Rinaldi, thank you so much.